so these are our special guests today. They're students just like you who went and did the Great Lakes Challenge. And we asked them to share some about their experience, how it was for them. And so we're gonna go one by one. Sammy's gonna get us started. So Sammy, if you'd like to unmute. Sammy is a grade 6 student at Tiger Jeet Singh Public School in the Halton District School Board with Mr. Marchione. And Sammy, when we talked, you talked a lot about how the recommendation that your team gave to the TRCA, you talked a lot about the mental models you wanted to foster for the guests at Tommy Thompson Park, right? What is the impression that you wanted to give so that they could be environmental stewards for the Great Lakes? Can you tell us more about what recommendation you gave and the role that mental models had in that?
Yeah, so the recommendation I gave was that we would have like iPads all over the Tommy Thompson Park, because I feel like it would be a lot more helpful than just like, having a guide at the front. So we said having iPads because technology is, advancing nowadays. And you could have like a guide there in case if somebody doesn't speak English, there could be like a translator for them. Or if somebody doesn't know how to use the iPads, there could be a guide to just like, help them. And if they want to find where like the water is, or like they want to find like picnic tables, they could just search up on the iPad where it is, and you'll show them the directions. And also, if people if they liked their first time being there, their first time being at the Tommy Thompson Park, the mental models will say that it's a good place to go to, and it will just make them come again. And eventually, it will be like their chill spot, like somewhere that they have fun at. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I really appreciate how you thought about the accessibility. So though we're bringing tech into the space to make it easier, tech isn't easy for everybody. And so what are the different ways that we can make that accessible? And I know that we talked about that. And so can you tell us more about why the accessibility was important to you and your team?
Because like some people, they're not really sure where to go, or they're not really sure how to get there, right? Because of course there could be many reasons why somebody they can't walk, or like they can't really remember things properly. So there could be like a guide there just to show them where it is, and like for them to just like hang out there, or for them to explore at that place that they are.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really appreciated just how much you considered that just because a lot of times people think technology is the answer to everything. And with the right supports, it can be a really great answer. And I really appreciate how your team thought about how to make it a really great answer for folks to build a really positive mental model of Tommy Thompson Park. And what do you want to remember 10 years from now? We just had everybody think about that. And it's actually a question we're going to ask all our guests. And so Sammy, for you, what do you want to remember in 10 years from now?
Something I want to remember from 10 years is probably about how polluted our lakes are, and also about invasive species, because I actually learned a lot about them. And when I spot them in the future, I want to like take note about them, because I seem like really interested in what invasive species are, and I want to go more deep into like what they are and what do they do. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I think it's wonderful that when we think of just how much time now you have to learn about that, to dive deeper, and who knows, the solutions you're going to create in the future to make our lakes even more healthy. And so thank you, Sammy, so much for all the work that you and your class did, and for all the work that you and your group did, and for coming and sharing today. I really appreciate it.
thank you.
Zach, why don't we talk to you next? Zach is one of our friends from the Toronto District School Board at Fairbank Public School with Ms. Guy's class. And maybe we'll start with you. What are you most proud of?
Okay, I am proud of the fact that I made a difference with my solution or idea that we put up as a class, which was, I think it was a combination of two things. We had a scavenger hunt based like learning system, which would encourage people to visit places all over the park. You get like, instead of like a normal map you would maybe get, you get like this map. It has special things on it, like markers that it'll be like, you could go there. It would tell you to go there. There'll be kiosks and people at the kiosks, and they would tell you information. Paired with a second thing, I think there was a website, which would have, and there might have been like QR codes that you could have scanned, which would bring you to like places on the website. And it would have information on like animals in the area. I think I'm kind of forgetting some of it. But it I think that the solution, it would have like gave people an incentive to visit all the places in the park and learn about all the animals and plants there, so they could yeah, and then maybe like they could become stewards, which is the like, and help the problem, which was the original like goal. I think not enough people were they weren't helping enough. I'm also proud of the effort that me and my class we put into creating an effective solution, but I think we did our best. We put a lot of thought and effort into it, and yeah, I'm also proud that the TRCA and I think they actually they listened to our solution, which was, it felt nice, like actually being acknowledged. Like our work didn't go to nothing. Yeah, our work we put in the effort, and it actually was acknowledged, and it wasn't ignored.
I love that. And I think for those of our friends who are watching who know what the causal model is, I love how in your description of your solution, you talked about how this will actually cause the impact you're looking for, which keeps pointing to how deep your thinking was and how creative it was, that it's not a simple solution, but actually it helps to create this chain of events that causes the impact you'd like to create. And so what do you want to remember 10 years from now, from all of this work that you've done?
Okay, from 10 years from now, me personally, I want to remember that I made a difference in the world with my thinking and thinking of others, my peers, classmates. Yeah, I want to be empowered by the fact that we helped solve a major issue with the Great Lakes and the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. Yeah. I would like to remember that we put a lot of effort into it, and it was the result was effective, and it was helpful, and it made a difference in the world.
I find it always strange when people talk about young people as future leaders and change makers of the future, when you keep proving just how much impact you can have now. And so I really appreciate that that's something that you want to take with you, because you don't have to wait, right? We don't have to wait until we're old. We don't have to wait 10 years from now, that there are things we can do right now in our schools, in our classrooms, but also outside and in the way that we live our lives that actually make a difference. And I'm really glad that that's something that mattered to you, because you don't have to wait, right? You're doing it already. You already did it. And what's neat about Zach is this is his second time doing a challenge kit and solving a real world problem. So we know that making change and impacting our community is really possible. And I'm really glad that that's something that you've taken away from this. So thank you so, so much for that. And I'd like to invite our last friends here, last but certainly not least. Hamza and Taysom are from the iSTEM, which stands for Innovation in STEM program at Aldershot School in the Halton District School Board. And they had their whole grade 9 team participating. And it was Ms. Sagar who was really connecting with us and supporting this work. And so a shout out to the whole grade 9 teaching team and Ms. Sagar. And so maybe Taysom, if you want to get us started, how did the ProPro help? How did using the process of real world problem solving and integrative thinking, what did you like about it? How did it help you in your thinking and work?
Yeah, the ProPro chart really helped us create new solutions. They helped us solve issues that came up during the processes, and it didn't limit us when we were brainstorming ways to solve the problem. The ProPro chart allowed us to pull ideas from like a number of sources, a variety of sources, which is amazing because instead of limiting our vision on one set of ideas, we got to create an entirely new solution that fit the problem we were trying to solve. Yeah, by focusing on what not the solution itself, but what each solution provides. If something comes up during the prototyping or exploratory processes, the pro chart allowed us to pull aspects that might, from ideas we considered earlier, that might solve the problem. And all in all, I think the pro chart provides a more holistic, all-encompassing approach because it allows us to think not of which solution is better, but which parts of it are best and what each can do to solve the problem.
Thank you. And Hamza, do you want to tell us about the idea that you and your group, you two were in two different groups. And so if you want to share about your idea, but also if there's anything you want to add about the Pro and Taysom, if you want to talk about your idea, by all means, chime in on each other's thoughts.
Yeah, so I think Tayson, he explained like the pro quite well. Our solutions, I went through like many different processes, right? We went through multiple different ways of trying to decide. We went through the pro try. We went from trial and error. Like we went through multiple processes. We eventually settled on two designs. So the first one is pretty simple. It's to really just kind of lower the amount of salt going into Hamilton Harbor and really, all lakes and oceans around the world, because we know that that's a massive problem, especially for fresh water, which is the only water we can drink, and there's a very low percentage of it on Earth. So essentially what it uses a formula that it takes info from Google Maps, average melting ratio of salt to ice, weather predictions to see how much snow will fall, and then how much average ice is created per X amount of snowfall to estimate how much salt is needed per area. And then from there, they'll load a certain amount into those salt trucks that disperse it and disperse a certain amount in those areas. So it lowers the amount of wastage that happens with all this, because runoff is also another problem, right? Because even if, some of it gets onto lawns and stuff, that not only destroys the lawns, but then runoff from rain and even the snow and ice melting can cause it to go into our sewers and then obviously back into those lakes that we want, that we got our fresh water from. And then the second design is to essentially stop the salt from going into lakes at all. So it uses a biodegradable semi-permeable membrane, cellophane, and then uses a process called reverse osmosis to force the water through the cellophane. But because the salt isn't as permeable as the water, the salt will stick to the cellophane and won't be able to get through. So obviously this solution doesn't really solve the fact that there's a high amount of salt in the water, but it can stop it from getting worse. And I feel like we need to stop it from getting worse before we try and make it better. Because if we try and make it better, at that point we can just go back, on what we've already done multiple times. If we keep trying to fix it over and over and over again. So we need to cut the problem off at the source before trying to fix it, I think.
Thank you so much for that. And Taysom, did you want to talk about your solution as well? Is something you wanted to add?
Sure. Our solution, while simple, was very effective. And I think sometimes that's what you need. We wanted to start an initiative that plants trees native to the area we're in and plants that absorb a lot of runoff to stop a lot of the phosphorus that was entering the lake from runoff from our streets, from fertilizers, and from our lawns and stuff. And so it stops the phosphorus, which is causing algae blooms and other problems in the water. So that was our solution. We're trying to start an initiative to just plant trees and other native plants.
Oh, it's wonderful. And what I love about all four of you talking about the different solutions you've had is just how varied they are, right? That there isn't a single right answer for how we make environmental stewards of the Great Lakes, how we help the Great Lakes, that there are so many different things that need to happen. And each of your ideas, it's why the TRSA needed so many, because there isn't one right answer. There are so many possibilities and you're all sharing them so wonderfully. And so let's end with the both of you sharing, what do you want to remember 10 years from now from this experience?
So I think really what I want to remember is, kind of working towards bettering the world, because you can't expect someone else to come along and do all the work for you. You have to be the one to take the initiative, because I feel like that's a really big problem in society with pollution and all that stuff, because people just assume, well, these companies like PETA and all that stuff, like these organizations, that they'll just come along and do it for me, right? So what's the problem if I do it? But you can't be the one to expect that, because that's just a form of laziness, right? You're not trying to actually, help that change. You're just trying to make excuses for why you shouldn't be helping, right? And I think, personally, I didn't realize how bad the water crisis actually was, right? Like I knew it was, somewhat bad and that we were running out of fresh water, but until I actually looked into it and I researched it, I didn't realize that it was so bad that, we're reaching the point of no return, right? Past a certain point, there's things that you can't reverse, and we're getting to that point much quicker than most people think. And I think that's another reason why it contributes to people thinking like, oh, it's fine if I do this now, because it's like, well, people are predicting that I'll come in like 2050, right? So it's like, that's still another 30, almost 30 years that I have. What's the point of caring about it now? And I think it's just, important to not to take things for granted, right? Like water, it's such a precious resource that every living thing needs and uses. And it's being used in so many different ways. Like, I mean, for example, a lot of people, they'll waste a bunch of water by dumping out things of what, like, let's say a glass of water, right? They only drink a few sips of it and then they'll dump it out, right? Instead of saving. Like, there's a lot of things that happen that waste water and that people just kind of take it for granted, right? And we don't want to live in a we should have type of mindset, right? Because once you've done something, right, once the action's been done, there's no going back, right? If you say like, like there's no point in saying, oh well, we should have done this after it's already happened, right? It should be we will do, or we can do, right? It should be talking about what you're going to do in the present rather than what you should have done in the future.
Yeah, and for myself, I'd like to remember two big things. The first one is how it develops empathy in our community. The big thing is how the project like shed a new light on issues in our community. Projects like this develop empathy, and they help us connect and feel for others who might be in similar or even more serious situations. Problems like water crises affect us too. It's not just something you'll hear about in the news or learn about in class. It's something that affects us and exists here in our own community. And secondly, I want to remember the power each of us has. One of the big questions I had is why, if we can find solutions to a problem as daunting as this, can't we solve other problems affecting ours and others' communities as well? If we put in the same time and effort we put here, we can help with so much more than just this one problem.
Thank you to all four of you so much. I hope and I think you represented the experiences of the many young people and students who participated. We had over 900 students do this work. So you are four of a really big cohort of humans that, to your point, took action and made a difference, and it was really helping the TRC. And the TRC has so much power because of the roles that they have, and you're really helping to influence their work and also how you are as you move forward, and all of us who participated. And so thank you so much to the four of you.